found an old man with a crippled back and 2 bad ears, and he didn't quite fulfill their expectation for a terrorist. Anyway, instead of being able to capture me and my henchmen, who didn't exist, I gave them a lecture on infant mortality, the causes in the past over which we had little control, and the causes in the present over which we should have much control. Most of the cops did not appreciate the lecture, though it was a reasonably scholarly production. In fact, they became downright bored by the presentation, and they slowly walked away, and 2 carloads drove off, and the leader of the counterterrorism squad quizzed me at length and did not get any answers that satisfied him. They were all ridiculous answers for a terrorist to get. And I thought to myself, my hard-earned money pays taxes to get these jokers to come out and pursue a person who couldn't be a terrorist even if he wanted to, who wouldn't be recruited into any terrorist organization worthy of its name, and that's the way our tax dollars are being spent. Anyway, I think the more intelligent among them were properly embarrassed, and they left with no success for that day. We've had others who came in supposedly pursuing criminals. I remember one of our own was accused of dreadful criminal activity when he was accused of stepping on the grass, which was inside the arbitrary perimeter, which was the edge of the sidewalk. As pedestrians come by, it's often necessary to step aside and make room. He had committed the unpardonable crime of stepping aside and stepped on the grass owned by the landlord who accommodates the killing company. Indeed, I think he was convicted of that dreadful crime of stepping on the grass. Unfortunately, they were not able to find any judge who could summon very much enthusiasm for the case, and it didn't turn out to be a front-page headline grabber. Another one was arrested, and he was arrested under paragraph so and paragraph such. I looked up the paragraph and subparagraph in Forest Church law, and it forbids talking, singing, or whistling too loud. Those are indeed hideous crimes, and rather ill-defined, but surely hideous. So I got there to the hearing ahead of time, and I asked the judge, what is my friend accused of? Too much whistling, or too much singing, or too much talking? And the judge looked at me and said, what are you talking about? I said, well, I'm quoting the law to you, which is being used for his arrest. And it forbids loud talking, singing, whistling. Which of those 3 dreaded activities is he guilty of? The judge shook his head and waved me off. He didn't know either. Well, and again, in that case, the judge wasn't really very impressed with the importance of the crime wave that was presumably laid out before him, and the matter was dismissed. But again, this is the way our tax dollars are being spent, supposedly promoting public safety. I've heard that man sing, and his singing is nothing to brag about, but it isn't that offensive. I've never heard him whistle, so I don't know how offensive his whistling is. And I've heard him speak many times. In fact, I've spoken with him, and I've never heard him say anything that was offensive in its content or its context or its formulation. So, again, I'm not impressed that law is being preserved and promoted at this place of killing.
Well, I want to thank you for the very kind words you gave me. And, I want everybody to know how often I get there in the morning and you're there. I see that sign where it says, don't, stop killing children. There it is, walking up and down the sidewalk. But before we do, I want to get back to a little bit more serious note on the state of the church today and what you see. We just recently had the Obama administration mandate to our church to provide against the church's mandate to abort patients and supply birth control and sterilization, all those other things. And one of my contentions has been, and a lot of my pro-life activities, is the bishops have not stood up and said what they needed to say. Now all of a sudden they're coming out and they're making these statements, but they're still, at least in my opinion, they're still only talking. They're not yet doing. You lived in a different church at a different time, and I'm just wondering if you can wrap this up by just giving us a lot of pearls of wisdom from your perspective of seeing a church that earned the title of church militant versus church milquetoast of today.
When I was a child, the Ku Klux Klan met 2 doors from my home, and they paraded around in their bed sheets, and they performed heroic works such as shooting my uncle, burning the barn of another uncle, telling lies about members of my family and my extended family, and so forth. So I know a little bit about a defensive church. Even there, in that community where the Ku Klux Klan had a firm grip on the population, even there, the church was held in very high regard, even by the people who hated her, and even higher regard by the people who loved her. And there were many people who had reason to love her because they were recipients of her charity, her prayers, her good works. The church, as I say, was held in high regard because of the things the church taught and the things her members believed and the things her clergy preached. Those things were not always popular, even among members.